Hey guys, so I just got home from watching I was about to say Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Hey guys, I just got home from watching Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, the new Planet of the Apes movie. And I just want to start off by saying that I'm a little bit sick right now, so if my voice sounds kind of weird, then that's why. I'm probably going to be coughing a lot in between takes. Now, when this movie was first announced, I was kind of weary about how this movie was going to be. One, because I absolutely love the trilogy that came before this, Rise, Dawn, and War. I thought they were done fantastic, especially those last two. So it's kind of scary to hear that they're going to make another one, because it's like, at what point do they start getting bad? And two, this is the first one that was made by Disney after they bought Fox. They bought Fox in 2019, I believe, and War, the last one of the trilogy, came out in 2017. So this is the first one that's going to be made under the Disney umbrella. And with their major hiccups with the MCU in recent memory, and their inconsistency, I can't say that, I have a lisp, it kind of throws everything off, but their inconsistency, you know what I'm talking about, with the Star Wars franchise, I was kind of worried how this movie is going to end up. I definitely had my doubts, but as the trailers started coming out and the plot of the movie was kind of revealed, it kind of got me kind of hyped for it, because it did sound really interesting. And now that I've finally seen the movie, I'm really happy to say that this is definitely a franchise that continues to be great. This movie's made by Wes Ball, who made the Maze Runner movies. I only ever saw the very first Maze Runner movie, and that was back when it was in theaters, so I don't really remember too much about it. But he definitely did a great job with this movie. The special effects especially are the one thing I want to start off by talking about, because it's probably going to be the one thing that most people praise about this movie, whether they like the movie or didn't like it. The special effects in this movie were just so mind-blowing, especially when they did like close-ups, which there's a lot of close-ups in this movie, of the apes. It genuinely looked real. There were a few times where in the action scenes you could kind of tell it was CGI, but it wasn't nearly as bad as some of the bad CGI I've seen in recent memory. And it's really cool because they announced that whenever this comes out on Blu-ray and 4K, they're gonna include a version of the movie with the mocap actors like on screen instead of all the CGIs for the entire movie, which is kind of exciting. I really wish the previous trilogy did that. But then you have the story, and the story is really interesting to me because this movie is set several years after the previous trilogy with Caesar. I don't know if they said specifically how long, but it's probably over 100 years. It said many generations later, so it had to have been at least like 100 years or so. And I just love how they played with the legacy of Caesar. I'm glad Caesar still had a huge impact on this movie. It's not like they just completely forgot about him, even though he's such a big character in the start of the Ape Revolution. But what's really interesting with what they did with that was there was different factions that had to do with the legacy of Caesar. There were some clans that didn't even know about Caesar, which the main character, Noah, his clan didn't know anything about Caesar. They'd never heard of him. Then you have the villain group of the movie who use Caesar's name, but twists his words and his teachings and just uses his name and his legacy to kind of rule and be tyrants over this part of the land. And I just think that's such a cool concept, because it's not hard to see the similarities between this and a lot of religions nowadays. Well, not even nowadays, but throughout history. The main character, Noah, even meets an orangutan, who is probably my favorite character in the whole movie, who kind of idolizes and sees Caesar as a Jesus Christ kind of character, which, I mean, Caesar kind of was. And he even wears like a necklace with the little star symbol that used to be Caesar's window in Rise of the Planet of the Apes. The window in the attic in James Franco's house. The orangutan in this movie wears a necklace with that on it, kind of like a cross. And just that whole aspect is so brilliant, especially when it comes to the villain. I believe his name is Proximus. It's such a clever way, because you have this built-in character that we grew to love throughout 3 movies in the previous trilogy, and he became this beloved character. And now in this movie, which is going to be the start of a new trilogy, I assume it's going to be a trilogy, and you have him completely twist the whole ideology that Caesar had and kind of bastardized Caesar's legacy. So it really helps to drive us to really hate this character, which I mean, obviously he's doing terrible things anyways. So we'd hate him for that, but we especially hate him because he's doing it in the name of Caesar, this character that we love. And I think that's one thing that kind of keeps the references to Caesar from feeling too fan servicey and too, oh, remember this character from the original trilogy? Because it's there to oppose what the villain is doing with his followers and having his followers believe. I do kind of wish they would have kind of delved a little bit more into him, just like showing him using Caesar's name a little more. I mean, they do throughout the movie, but they don't really show him like using Caesar's ideology in the wrong way enough. They do it a decent amount, but I do wish they would have kind of delved into that ideology, the warped ideology that he has and has implanted pretty much into all of his followers. Maybe they'll expand on that in future movies. But I do want to touch on the main character, Noah, because I think he was a pretty good new protagonist for this trilogy. Obviously, I don't know how I'm going to feel about him compared to Caesar yet, because this is just the first movie, whereas Caesar has had 3 movies. And it's kind of funny because they actually kind of designed him to look like Caesar. I mean, he obviously has noticeable differences, but he does look kind of similar. Of all the apes in this movie, he definitely looked the most like Caesar. And honestly, I'm not going to be surprised if at some point in these movies they say that he is a descendant of Caesar. I don't know, maybe that's just a Star Wars fan in me talking. I do go back and forth on how I feel about the amount of human inclusion into the story. I mean, they are necessary, don't get me wrong. And it wasn't like it was bad, the amount that they were in the movie. But I feel like they could have taken some of it out because the ape story by itself was interesting enough. And this was definitely by far the least interesting human aspect to a Planet of the Apes movie out of the past 4 movies. But like I said, it wasn't like it was bad or anything. And they did bring up some conflicts that were pretty interesting between the 2 sides. Another thing I really loved is just the settings, the different places that they go to that are just completely overrun with vegetation and plants and trees and stuff growing out of buildings and bridges. I really love stuff like that, like The Last of Us and different post-apocalyptic movies and TV shows, and just abandoned buildings in general. It's just, there's something about it that fascinates me. I don't know where I'd rank it with these past 4 movies. Well, this movie and then the previous trilogy. I'd have to see it again. I really do love the bleak atmosphere of the 2 Matt Reeves movies. But then again, those movies were mostly about like the extinction of the human race, whereas this one is several generations after that. And even though the story is kind of dark in a way, and there's definitely a really dark scene at the beginning of the movie, which was like the inciting incident that started the story of the movie. There was a sense of brightness throughout the movie that weren't really there in the Matt Reeves movies, which the Matt Reeves movies also were either really like cloudy and dark or in like the snow. So I guess it's not really fair to judge the 2 in that sense because this movie was completely in sunlight.